So, when you hear the name Aristotle, what pops into your head? Probably one of those old Greek statues, right? A bust. But honestly, that image just doesn't do him justice. This guy wasn't just thinking about stuff. He was building a complete blueprint for reality itself. I mean, he came up with this incredible logical system to explain, well, everything, from a tiny rock on the ground to the stars in the sky. So come on, let's jump in and actually see how he built this whole universe, piece by piece.
Now, to really get Aristotle, you've got to start with his teacher, the famous Plato, because so much of what Aristotle did was a reaction against Plato's ideas. See, Plato had this idea that the real world wasn't the one we see. It was this perfect, invisible world of what he called forms. So the chair you're sitting in right now, Plato would say that's just a cheap knockoff, a flawed copy of the perfect idea of a chair. And Aristotle just comes along and is like, nope, let's start with what we can actually see and touch, right here, right now. For him, reality kicks off with the physical stuff. He was, and I mean this literally, much more down to earth. All right, so if we're going to focus on the physical world, Aristotle realized we need some ground rules. You can't just dive in without them. Before we can even start talking about what things are, we have to agree on the basic laws of, well, what did it even mean to be a thing? What does it mean for something to exist? And this is the absolute foundation of his whole system. And here we go. This is the big one, the law of non-contradiction. This is no exaggeration, the bedrock of all logical thinking. All it really says is this: something can't be a tree and also not a tree at the exact same time in the exact same way. I know it sounds super obvious, right? But think about it. Without this rule, the whole idea of logic just completely falls apart. A cannot be non-A. End of story. Okay, so once you have that first law, this next one just clicks right into place. It's the law of identity. It just means a thing is what it is. A thing is itself. There's a fantastic way to remember this one. A cat is a cat, not a catastrophe. I mean, a cat might cause a catastrophe for sure, but that's a whole different story. The point is, its identity is solid. A cat is a cat. And the third rule in this foundational trio is the law of the excluded middle. What this does is it sets up what we call a two-valued logic. Basically, any statement is either true or it's false. Something either is a cat or is not a cat. In Aristotle's world, there's no weird third option, no shadowy middle ground or something kind of is and kind of isn't. It's one or the other. And this is where you really see how precise Aristotle's thinking was. He draws this really important line in the sand. He'd say white and not white are contradictories. If you put them together, you've covered every single possibility. Something is either white or it's not. But white and black? Those are just contraries. Yeah, they're opposites, but they don't cover everything, do they? What about gray or green or blue? It's this level of detail that lets you map out the world without getting lost in confusion. Okay, so we've got the rules of the game now. The laws of reality are set. So the obvious next question is, what are the actual players? What are the things in this universe that are following these rules? Like, what's the real fundamental stuff that makes up our world? And boom, here it is. This is his biggest, most radical break from Plato. For Aristotle, this particular tree, the one you can go out and touch, the one dropping leaves on your car, that tree is more real than some abstract idea of treeness. Reality isn't floating around in some world of ideas. It's right here in the individual things. You have to understand, this was a complete earthquake in philosophy. When he said that these individual things are the primary substances, he basically took Plato's whole view of the world and turned it completely upside down. He's saying that all those things Plato called junky copies are actually the main event. They're the real deal. So, let's lock in this key idea. A primary substance. What is it? It's just an individual, particular thing that can exist all on its own. You, me, the desk you're at, that tree outside. These are the fundamental Legos of reality. They're not just shadows of some other, better reality. They are reality. All right, so if these individual things are what's real, Aristotle's not done yet. He wants to know more about them, like what are they made of? And maybe even more important, what's their purpose? What are they for? Because for him, everything in nature has a built-in purpose. He came up with this idea called hylomorphism. Sounds fancy, but it's actually a really powerful, pretty simple concept. It's just that every single object is made of two things working together. It's matter
That's the raw stuff it's made of. And its form, that's its blueprint, its structure, the thing that makes it what it is. And the key is, you never just find pure matter or pure form out in the wild. They're always locked together. And that form we just talked about, that's what decides a thing's purpose, or what Aristotle called its telos. You can think of it as its ultimate goal, its final cause. The go-to example is always the acorn, right? The matter is just the nutty stuff inside, but its form holds the entire blueprint, the telos, to become a massive oak tree. Its whole life, its whole being, is pointed toward reaching that potential.
So this whole idea of telos, of purpose, it naturally sorts things into a kind of ladder of existence. Down at the bottom, you've got plants. They have what he called a vegetative soul. Their purpose, basically just to grow and reproduce. Then you get to animals. They have all that plant stuff, plus they can feel things and move around. And then there's us, humans. We've got the plant functions, we've got the animal functions, but we have this extra game-changing layer, the ability to reason. Rationality. That's our unique purpose.
Okay, this is where it all comes together. We've got our rules of logic, we know that individual things are real, and we know everything has a purpose. So now, let's use all that to tackle the biggest question of them all. What makes the whole universe go?
So Aristotle looks up at the night sky and he sees the stars and the planets moving. And to him, they looked like they were moving in these perfect, endless circles. It was a motion that never, ever stopped. So what could possibly be the cause of something like that?
And being Aristotle, he thought about it logically. He figured, okay, whatever is causing a motion that goes on forever must itself last forever. And not just that, it has to be totally unchanging, because if the cause changed, then the motion it created would have to change too. But the stars just kept on moving in that same perfect way.
So here's the puzzle. How can something cause motion if it can't move or change itself? The whole answer hinges on this really clever distinction he makes. You've got your efficient cause. That's what we usually think of as a cause. It's a push, a cue ball smacking into another ball. But then there's a final cause. This one doesn't push, it pulls. Think about it. A championship trophy doesn't physically shove an athlete to the gym. The idea of the trophy, the goal, is what inspires them, what moves them to train.
And that, right there, is Aristotle's mind-blowing solution, the unmoved mover. It's the ultimate final cause for the entire universe. It doesn't push anything, it doesn't exert any force, it just exists as this state of pure, absolute, unchanging perfection. And the whole universe, every star and planet, is moved because it's drawn to that perfection. It's like a cosmic desire to be like that perfect thing. It's actually a really beautiful, almost poetic idea, isn't it? The stars are moving because they're filled with a sense of wonder, and they're trying to copy, to imitate, the perfection of this ultimate cause. So the universe isn't some dead machine with gears being pushed around. It's more like a living thing, being pulled towards something good and perfect. And what's so cool is how this brings everything from the cosmic scale right back down to us, to the human level. Because according to Aristotle, that very same sense of wonder that moves the stars, that's what gets us to ask questions and do philosophy in the first place. That urge we have to understand things, to reach for what's true and good, that's not just a human thing. It's a force of the universe. So at the end of the day, here's what we have. Aristotle built this incredible model of reality, all based on logic, on what he could see, and on this deep idea of purpose. And it all leads to a universe that's not just random, but is driven by a desire for the good. And that, of course, leaves us with the big question, the one he kind of leaves on our doorstep. If the universe has a purpose, what's yours? What is your telos? What's the final cause that moves you?